finished my chart. This is the third in my Crafting for Hope series, making a Star Trek themed mobile for my baby. Crafting for Hope is a fundraiser to help fight childhood cancer. If you'd like to know more about this fundraiser, please look in the description below or check out my intro video. As I mentioned, this is the third video in the series. The first ship was the Marauder, the second was the Bird of Prey. And now on to Enterprise D. Here's some reference images I used. Now to start off, I cut out some scaled blueprint images of the ship. And here you can see a little toy of my son's that I'm going to be ripping apart. I've already pirated its wings for the Bird of Prey so that it could have crinkly wings in the ship, and now I'm gutting it to take out the little bell rattle, which is going to go in the saucer section of the Enterprise. The first step is taking this 100% wool felt and cutting out the saucer section. I need to scale it up a little bit from my blueprint because when you do needle felting, it causes some shrinkage as it pulls the fibers together, so I estimate a little bit extra on the outside. Now what I'm doing here is taking some wool yarn that I found and I wanted to be able to use as a core stuffing. I'm using the needle felting needle to test and see if this yarn is actually wool and feltable. Sometimes you can get yarn that is acrylic or other materials that doesn't felt. An easy way to check if you don't have a label is to just try felting it and see how it goes. Now I'm just cutting out the layers that need to be raised on the saucer section so that I can stack them to give a very slight raised effect. Here you'll see I'm taking some of that wool yarn and I'm putting a little bit in between each layer. The reason I'm doing this is because the felt sheets themselves are a bit difficult to felt together. The fibers are very short because of how they make sheets, where the yarn has very long fibers. So if I put the longer fibers in between, it not only makes it easier to felt, but it gives it a little bit more dimension. Here you can see I've just made a ball of that wool yarn and I'm surrounding the rattle, so the rattle's sort of embedded in the middle. You can see this is all felting together quite well. Once I've got everything I want on the inside, I just felt around the edges and it makes a little Enterprise saucer dumpling. Dumpling. Now for this part, I just keep checking against my scaled blueprint to make sure that it's the dimensions and shape that I need, because I want it as close to scale as possible. So I just keep going around the edge over and over and felting it more and more, because as I said, it pulls the fibers in, so the excess around the rim gets pulled in. At a certain point, I felt that it was felted well enough, but there was still a little bit of the felt sheet left, so I'm just trimming that off because I don't need it. Now this part was really tricky because the Enterprise is a very odd shape and I didn't have a image that worked well for visualizing and cutting out the felt in the way that I'd need to be the body of the ship. So I'm doing this all by hand, sort of estimating the shapes and where they should be and making little paper cutouts so that I can more easily see what sort of shapes I need to cut in the felt and how I need to make the core shaped. Unfortunately, I used all of that blue yarn that I had, so for the body, I have to use this beige wool yarn. Now that the body core is done, I'm felting it up into the saucer so that it has a really secure hold. And I just need to be careful to not push the beige colored fibers through the saucer section. So I'm going at an angle and I'm making sure that I'm hitting into the blue yarn that's inside the saucer, but that I'm not puncturing all the way through the saucer. Because with needle felting, the fibers will go as far as the needle goes. It pulls it with little barbs that are on the needle, and I don't want to end up with this tan color poking out randomly on my saucer. I'm just covering the rest of the body with the felt sheets. You can hear the rattle works really well. And now onto the nacelles. So I have cut out some pieces of wool, again a little bit scaled up to size, and I'm using a piece of copper wire to be a bit of an armature for these because of the way they have to stick up. I wanted the baby to be able to grab them and hold them if needed, but I didn't want them to be completely floppy. So once I've got my wire bent to shape, I'm just using my needle felting needle to puncture a guiding hole through the body of the ship, and then I'm slowly working my wire into that hole. This part was very difficult. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but maybe if I ever make another one of these, I'll figure it out. Similarly to what I did with the rest of the ship, where I needed to have a really good hold with the needle felting, I added some yarn in the core of the nacelles because again, it's just very difficult for this sheet of felt to be felted together because the fibers are so short. And you can see I just continue to cover everything in this bluish gray felt sheets. Now for the fun part, we're on to the detail. So all of these little bags are full of 100% colored wool. And this part is much more delicate than creating the ship's shape. You want to push the fibers in, but you don't want to push really hard or really far, or they will just vanish right into your piece. So it takes a bit of practice, but the results are great. And I'm just trimming off any fibers that are sticking out once I have felted the colored wool in as far as I want. Here you can see I've got all of the orange and red details done. It's very tricky on these models to decide how far to go into the detail. There's so much detail on these ships because obviously they're quite large, but when you're making something this size, you just sort of have to decide what's worth the time and effort and what will look good and translate into, yes, this looks like the Enterprise, or yes, this looks like the Marauder or Bird of Prey. So some of it is just artistic decision, things I like, so I put them in, but some of it is just simply it'll look goofy and less to scale if you put some things in or don't put other things in. I tried to just pick and choose what I wanted to do and what I personally felt would look good. Now that all my colored wool details are done, I'm going to put on the most important part for the Enterprise D, which is its registry number. So I did consider doing this in black wool, which is why you see the little bag there, but I could not possibly do this as tiny and precise as needed, so I ended up taking a black pen. This was very tricky because writing or drawing with ink on wool is really hard, so I used scissors to snip off excess fibers that got touched by the ink, and I used my needle felting needle to press in areas to get the detail as fine as possible so it was readable. And here's the final shots. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and please, again, remember this is for a fundraiser, so if you'd like to donate to the fundraiser, please look in the description below for the link. If you enjoyed this and want to see more of me making my art, please like, follow, and subscribe.